We're live this morning in the Cannon House office building, waiting for today's January 6th committee hearing to begin. It's scheduled for about 9 minutes from now, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Today's questioning will be led by Democratic committee member Adam Schiff. He's represented California's 28th district for 11 terms, and he also sits on the House Judiciary Committee. He participated in both impeachment proceedings against former President Donald Trump as an impeachment manager. Mr. Schiff was both an attorney and a prosecutor before serving in Congress. Today, the committee will hear from 4 witnesses: Russell Bowers, Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives; Brad Raffensperger, Georgia Secretary of State; Gabriel Sterling, COO of the Georgia Secretary of State's office, all Republicans; and Wandrea Shea Moss, a former Georgia Elections Department employee who served in a nonpartisan position. Today's coverage of the January 6th committee and all of C-SPAN's programming is brought to you as a public service by the cable industry and these television companies, including Verizon Fios, Comcast, and Charter Communications. And a reminder, if you need to step away from your TV, you can follow all of today's hearing on the go with C-SPAN Now. Congressional sessions and speeches, conferences, and hearings, all on your phone with C-SPAN Now, our free video app. And as witnesses are gathered, just waiting for the January 6th committee to start its next hearing, today focusing on efforts to pressure officials from Georgia and Arizona to help President Trump change election results. California Congressman Adam Schiff will lead the questioning for the committee today. Witnesses include Georgia Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who's seated.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare the committee in recess at any point. Pursuant to House Deposition Authority Regulation 10, the chair announces the committee's approval to release the deposition material presented during today's hearing. Good afternoon. At our last hearing, we told the story of a scheme driven by Donald Trump to pressure former Vice President Mike Pence to illegally overturn the election results. We showed that when the pressure campaign failed and Mike Pence fulfilled his constitutional obligation, Donald Trump turned a violent mob loose on him. We showed that the mob came within roughly 40 feet of the Vice President. Today, we'll show that what happened to Mike Pence wasn't an isolated part of Donald Trump's scheme to overturn the election. In fact, pressuring public servants into betraying their oaths was a fundamental part of the playbook. And a handful of election officials in several key states stood between Donald Trump and the upending of American democracy. As we begin today, it's important to remember when we count the votes for president, we count the votes state by state. For the most part, the candidates who win the popular vote in a state wins all the state's electoral college votes. And whoever wins a majority of the electoral college votes wins the presidency. So when Donald Trump tried to overturn the election results, he focused on just a few states. He wanted officials at the local and state level to say the vote was tainted by widespread fraud and throw out the results, even though, as we showed last week, there wasn't any voter fraud that could have overturned the election results. And like Mike Pence, these public servants wouldn't go along with Donald Trump's scheme. And when they wouldn't embrace the big lie and substitute the will of the voters with Donald Trump's will to remain in power, Donald Trump worked to ensure they faced the consequences. Threats to people's livelihood and lives, threats of violence that Donald Trump knew about and amplified. And in our other hearings, we can't just look backward at what happened in late 2020 and in the early 2021 because the danger hadn't gone away. Our democracy endured a mighty test on January 6th and in the days before. We say our institutions held. But what does that really mean? Democratic institutions aren't abstractions or ideas. They are local officials who oversee elections, secretaries of state, people in whom we placed our trust that they'll carry out their duties. But what if they don't? 2 weeks ago, New Mexico held its primary elections. One county commission refused to certify the results, citing vague, unsupported claims dealing with Dominion voting machines. The court stepped in, saying New Mexico law required the commission to certify the results. 2 of the 3 members of the commission finally relented. One still refused, saying his vote, quote, isn't based on any evidence, it's not based on any facts, it's only based on my gut feeling and my own intuition, and that's all I need. By the way, a few months ago, this county commissioner was found guilty of illegally entering the Capitol grounds on January 6th. This story reminds us of a few things. First, as we've shown in our previous hearings, claims that widespread voter fraud tainted the 2020 presidential election have always been a lie. Donald Trump knew they were a lie, and he kept amplifying them anyway. Everything we described today, the relentless, destructive pressure campaign on state and local officials, was all based on a lie. Donald Trump knew it, he did it anyway. Second, the lie hasn't gone away. It's corrupting our democratic institutions. People who believe that lie are now seeking positions of public trust. And as seen in New Mexico, their oath to be to the people they serve will take a back seat to their commitment to the big lie. If that happens, who will make sure our institutions don't break under the pressure? We won't have close calls. We'll have a catastrophe. My distinguished colleague from California, Mr. Schiff, will present much of the Select Committee's finding on this matter. First, I'm pleased to recognize our Vice Chair, Ms. Cheney of Wyoming, for any opening statement she'd care to offer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Today, we will begin examining President Trump's effort to overturn the election by exerting pressure on state officials and state legislatures. Donald Trump had a direct and personal role in this effort, as did Rudy Giuliani, as did John Eastman. In other words, the same people who were attempting to pressure Vice President Mike Pence to reject electoral votes illegally were also simultaneously working to reverse the outcome of the 2020 election at the state level. Each of these efforts to overturn the election is independently serious. Each deserves attention both by Congress and by our Department of Justice. But, as the federal court has already indicated, these efforts were also part of a broader plan. And all of this was done in preparation for January 6th. I would note 2 points for particular focus today. First, today you will hear about calls made by President Trump to officials of Georgia and other states. As you listen to these tapes, keep in mind what Donald Trump already knew at the time he was making those calls. He had been told over and over again that his stolen election allegations were nonsense. For example, this is what former Attorney General Bill Barr said to President Trump about allegations in Georgia.
We took a hard look at this ourselves, and based on our review of it, including the interviews of the key witnesses, the Fulton County allegations had no merit. The ballots under the table were legitimate ballots. They weren't in a suitcase. They had been pre-opened for eventually feeding into the machine. All the stuff about the water leak and that there was some subterfuge involved. We felt there was some confusion, but there was no evidence of a subterfuge to create an opportunity to feed things into the count. And so we didn't see any evidence of fraud in the Fulton County episode.
And Acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue told Donald Trump this.
And I said something to the effect of, sir, we've done dozens of investigations, hundreds of interviews. The major allegations are not supported by the evidence developed.
The nitty kitty.
Mr. Trump was told by his own advisors that he had no basis for his stolen election claims. Yet he continued to pressure state officials to change the election results. Second, you will hear about a number of threats and efforts to pressure state officials to reverse the election outcome. One of our witnesses today, Gabriel Sterling, explicitly warned President Trump about potential violence on December 1st, 2020, more than a month before January 6th. You will see excerpts from that video repeatedly today.
It has all gone too far. All of it.
Hopefully this is better.
Joe DeGenova today asked for Chris Krebs, a patriot who ran CISA, to be shot. A 20-something tech in Gwinnett County today has death threats and a noose put out saying he should be hung for treason because he was transferring a report on batches from an EMS to a county computer so he could read it.
I fixed the thing and got caught up.
It has to stop.
Doing it from a foundation row actually super helped.
Mr. President, you have not condemned these actions or this language.
I'm just racist against chains.
Senators, you have not condemned this language or these actions. This has to stop. We need you to step up, and if you're going to take a position of leadership, show some. My boss, Secretary Raffensperger, his address is out there. They have people doing caravans in front of their house. They've had people come onto their property. It has to stop. This is elections. This is the backbone of democracy, and all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this.
The point is this: Donald Trump did not care about the threats of violence. He did not condemn them. He made no effort to stop them. He went forward with his fake allegations anyway.
It was so much easier, Bartek.
One more point. I would urge all of those watching today to focus on the evidence the committee will present. Don't be distracted by politics. This is serious. We cannot let America become a nation of conspiracy theories and thug violence. Finally, I want to thank our witnesses today for all of your service to our country. Today, all of America will hear about the selfless actions of these men and women who acted honorably to uphold the law,
What a dope
protect our
emote.
freedom, and preserve our Constitution. Today, Mr. Chairman, we will all see an example
That's a
of
sick
what truly
emote.
makes America great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Without objection, the chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Vice Chair. On November 3rd, 2020, Donald Trump ran for re-election to the office of the presidency, and he lost. His opponent, Joe Biden, finished ahead in the key battleground states of Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania,
Also a
Georgia,
great emote.
and elsewhere. Nevertheless, and for the first time in history, the losing presidential candidate fought to hold on to power. As we have
Everybody
seen in
has
previous hearings, he
dope
did so through a
emotes.
variety of means.
Also, welcome, Bread
On
Crochet.
Election Day,
Everybody
he sought to stop the counting
help
of the
make
vote,
sure that Bread Crochet
knowing
feels
that the
welcome.
millions of absentee ballots elections officials would be counting on Election Day
Ugh,
and thereafter
Clara, no
would run
fun having to
strongly
be at work
against him
later.
and deliver a victory to
Okay,
Joe
let's
Biden.
start crocheting here.
Next, and when he could not stop the counting, he tried to stop state legislatures and governors from certifying the results
Pull
of
out
the
my
election.
pattern real fast.
He went to court and filed dozens of frivolous lawsuits, making unsubstantiated claims of fraud. When that too failed, he mounted a pressure campaign directed at individual state legislators to try to get them to go back into session and either declare him the winner, decertify Joe Biden as the winner, or send two slates of electors to Congress, one for Biden and one for him, and pressure Vice President Pence to choose him as the winner. But the state legislatures wouldn't go along with this scheme.
I'm
and
on
neither
row
would the
4
Vice
if anybody,
President.
if anybody is
None
following
of the
along on this
legislatures
pattern.
agreed to go back into special session and declare him the winner. No legitimate state authority in the states Donald Trump lost would agree to appoint fake Trump electors and send them to Congress. But this didn't stop the Trump campaign either. They assembled groups
Oh,
of
man,
individuals in
Rimworld
key
rules,
battleground
Rep.
states
Lloyd.
and got them to call themselves electors, created phony certificates associated with these fake electors, and then transmitted these certificates to Washington and to the Congress to be counted during the joint session of Congress on January 6th. None of this worked. But according to Federal District Judge David Carter, former President Trump and others likely violated multiple federal laws by engaging in this scheme, including conspiracy to defraud the United States. You will hear evidence of the former president and his top advisors' direct involvement in key elements of this plot, or what Judge Carter called a coup in search of a legal theory. For as the judge explained, President Trump's pressure campaign to stop the electoral count did not end with Vice President Pence. It targeted every tier of federal and state elected officials. Convincing state legislatures, he said, to certify competing electors was essential to stop the count and ensure
Yeah,
President
oh no.
Trump's reelection. As we have seen in our prior hearings,
Hi, guys.
running through this scheme was a big lie that the election was plagued with massive fraud and somehow stolen. You'll remember what the president's own Attorney General, Bill Barr, said he told the president about these claims of massive fraud affecting the outcome of the election.
And I told him that the stuff that his people were shoveling out to the public was bullshit. I mean, that the claims of fraud were bullshit.
The president's lie was and is a dangerous cancer on the body politic. If you can convince Americans that they cannot trust their own elections, that any time they lose it is somehow illegitimate, then what is left but violence to determine who should govern? This brings us to the focus of today's hearing. When state elections officials refused to stop the count, Donald Trump and his campaign tried to put pressure on
Literally all the stupid asshole pundits that are like making light of
the winner of
this.
states he lost.
Either they're evil or they do not understand what kind of precedent they're
refused
trying
to go
to
back
set.
into session and appoint Trump electors, he amped up the pressure yet
Nice,
again.
Bartik.
Anyone who got in the way of Donald Trump's continued hold on power after he lost the election was the subject of a dangerous and escalating campaign of pressure. This pressure campaign brought angry phone calls and texts, armed protests, intimidation, and all too often, threats of violence and death. State legislators were singled out. So too were statewide elections officials. Even local elections workers, diligently doing their jobs, were accused of being criminals and had their lives turned upside down. As we will show, the president's supporters heard the former president's claims of fraud and the false allegations he made against state and local officials as a call to action.
Stop the steal! Stop the steal! Stop the steal! You're a threat to democracy! You're a threat to free and honest elections!
Who wants to side with a person who sounds like this?
And then about 45 minutes later, we started to hear the noises outside.
So much more disturbing than anybody's giving it credit for.
My stomach sunk, and I thought, it's me. And then it's just, we don't know what's going to, I mean, the uncertainty of that was what was the fear. Like, are they coming with guns? Are they going to attack my house? I'm in here with my kid. You know, I'm trying to put him to bed. And so it was, that was the scariest moment, just not knowing what was going to happen.
This pressure campaign against state and local officials spanned numerous contested states, as you will see in this video produced by the Select Committee.
My name is Josh Roselman. I'm an investigative counsel for the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. Beginning in late November 2020, the president and his lawyers started appearing before state legislators, urging them to give their electoral votes to Trump, even though he lost the popular vote.
I represent President Trump along with Jenna Ellis, and this is our fourth or fifth hearing.
This election has to be turned around because we won Pennsylvania by a lot, and we won all of these swing states by a lot.
This was a strategy with both practical and legal elements. The Select Committee has obtained an email from just 2 days after the election, in which a Trump campaign lawyer named Cleta Mitchell asked another Trump lawyer, John Eastman, to write a memo justifying the idea.
The idea that justice might be seen as a spoonful of sugar
for the first time.
Right after the election. It might have been before the election.
Eastman prepared a memo attempting to justify this strategy, which was circulated to the Trump White House, Rudy Giuliani's legal team, and state legislators around the country. And he appeared before the Georgia State Legislature to advocate for it publicly.
You could also do what the Florida legislature was prepared to do, which is to adopt a slate of electors yourselves. And when you add in the mix of the significant statistical anomalies and sworn affidavits and video evidence of outright election fraud, I don't think it's just your authority to do that, but quite frankly, I think you have a duty to do that to protect the integrity of the election here in Georgia.
But Republican officials in several states released public statements recognizing that President Trump's proposal was unlawful. For instance, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp called the proposal unconstitutional, while Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers wrote that the idea would undermine the rule of law. The
Oh my
pressure
God, I
campaign
didn't
to get
see
state
that.
legislators to go along with the scheme
Phoenix TV.
intensified
I don't
when
really
President
watch
Trump
TV,
invited
though.
delegations
Well,
from
that's
Michigan
a
and
lie. I
Pennsylvania
watch old
to the
TV
White
on
House.
Netflix.
Either you or Speaker Chatfield, did you make the point to the president that you were not going to do anything that violated Michigan law?
My sister's here. Everybody say hi to A. Elizabeth 314. Hi, Sissy.
I think that words
hi, I miss you so bad.
I would have more likely used is we were going to follow the law.
Nevertheless, the pressure continued. The next day, President Trump tweeted, quote, "Hopefully the courts and/or legislatures will have the courage to do what has to be done to maintain the integrity of our elections and the United States of America itself. The world is watching." He posted multiple messages on Facebook listing the contact information for state
Clara,
officials
I'm pretty sure that I
and
have
urging his supporters to contact them to,
hyperhidrosis.
quote, "demand a vote on decertification."
Oh,
In
Steve,
one of
it's good to
those
see you too.
posts,
Hi.
President Trump disclosed Mike Shirkey's personal phone
Aim,
number to
how
his
are you
millions
doing?
of followers.
All I remember is receiving over just shy of 4,000 text messages over a short period of time, calling to take action. It was a loud noise. Loud, consistent
It's okay. I won't
beats.
tell anyone.
You know, we heard that
It's just between me and you.
that the Trump folks are calling and asking for changes in the electors, and you guys can do this. Well, you know, they were believing things that were untrue.
These efforts also involved targeted outreach to state
Still a
legislators.
troublemaker? Always. Always
My
and
name is
forever.
Angela McCallum. I'm calling from Trump campaign headquarters in Washington, D.C. You do have the power to reclaim your authority and send a slate of electors that will support President Trump and Vice President Pence.
From President Trump's lawyers and from Trump himself.
And I've become friendly with legislators that I didn't know 4 weeks ago.
Another legislator, Pennsylvania House Speaker Brian Cutler, received
I
daily
didn't see
voicemails
her
from
hydrate.
Trump's lawyers in the last week of
I'm
November.
so sorry. Thank you for looking out for me.
Mr. Speaker, this is Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis. We're calling you together because we'd like to discuss, obviously,
Excuse me, I'm
the
so
election.
Hello, Mr. Speaker. This is Jenna
My
Ellis, and I'm here with
CBD
Mayor
vape is
Giuliani.
really harsh sometimes.
Hey, Brian, it's Rudy. I really have something important to call to your attention that I think really changes things.
Cutler felt that the outreach was inappropriate and asked his lawyers to tell Rudy Giuliani to
This
stop
poor dude looks
calling.
17.
But Giuliani continued to reach out.
I understand that you don't want to talk to me now. I just want to bring some facts to your attention and talk to you as a fellow Republican.
On December 30th, Trump ally Steve Bannon announced a protest at
William?
Cutler's home.
We're getting on the
Love
road
you
and we're
lots.
going down to Cutler. We're going to start going to offices.
I read that his
and if we
wanted
have
to
we're going to
poop
go to
in.
homes and we're going to let them know what we think about them.
There were multiple protests.
That
I actually don't
was
remember
very
the exact
good.
number.
Very
there
good
was at
indeed.
least
I hope you're having
3,
a
I
wonderful
think,
day at work.
outside either my
We're watching
district
a
office
sedition.
or my home. And you're correct. My son, my then 15-year-old son, was home by himself for the first one. All of my personal information was doxed online.
Okay, see you
It
later,
was
Phoenix.
My
for
personal
hanging
email,
out.
my personal cell phone, my home phone number. In
That
fact, we
face
had
of
to
someone
disconnect
can't
our
take it.
home phones.
I don't think that
for
anybody
about 3
ever
days
wants
because it
to
would
talk
ring all
to
hours of the night and would fill up
Rudy
with messages.
Giuliani. I read Rory says hello. Hi, Rory. Good kitty.
In Michigan. Poll watchers denied access in Pennsylvania.
These ads were another element in the effort. The Trump campaign spent millions of dollars running ads
Hi, Poetry
online and
Crow.
on television.
Good to see you.
Evidence is
Everybody's
overwhelming.
coming in now.
Call your governor and legislators. Demand they inspect the machines and hear the evidence.
Public pressure on state officials often grew dangerous
I
in the
can't
lead up to
believe
January
this
6th.
really happened in the United States. I can't believe it. We truly live in just the dumbest, worst timeline, you guys.
What are we going to do? What can you and I do to a state legislator besides kill him? Although we should not do that. I'm not advising that, but I mean, what else can you do, right?
Holy shit.
The punishment for treason is death.
Hello, Wednesday. How are you?
The state pressure campaign and the danger it posed to state officials and to state capitals around the nation was a dangerous precursor to the violence we saw on January 6th at the U.S.
The trolls
Capitol.
made it to the granary, yeah.
Today you will hear from Rusty Bowers, the Republican Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives.
I was
He will tell
live
us about his
when it
conversations
happened,
with the
and we
president,
just sat and watched
Rudy
the news
Giuliani,
together.
and John Eastman, and what the president's team asked of him, and how
Josiah
his
and I,
oath
we
of
were going to
office
play
did
hunt
not
that
permit it.
day.
You will then hear from Brad Raffensperger, the Republican Secretary of State of Georgia, who Trump directed
But
to,
instead,
quote,
we watched a
find
bunch of meth heads try to break
11,780
into the
votes
fucking White House.
that did not exist, but just the exact number of votes needed to overtake Joe Biden. You will also hear from Gabriel Sterling, the chief operating officer, his chief operating officer, about the spurious claims of fraud in the elections in Georgia, and who, responding to a cascading set of threats to his elections team, warned the president to stop, that someone was going to get killed. And you will hear from Wandrea Shea Moss, a former local elections worker in Fulton County, Georgia, about how all of the lies about the election impacted the lives of
My
real
head is
people
killing me.
who
I need my
administer our
coffee.
elections.
If I
and still
think
do.
Josiah might have fallen back
You will
asleep,
hear
I
what
might
they
have to go get
experienced
my
when the most
coffee in a
powerful man in the
second.
world, the
I'm
President of
dying.
the
My
United
head
States,
hurts.
sought to cling to power after being voted out of office by the American people.
Yeah, Oywin,
The system
imagine how
held,
it felt to be an
but
Iowan
barely.
in that moment.
And the system held because people of courage, Republicans and Democrats, like the witnesses you will hear today,
It should have been
put
Bernie,
their oath
man.
to the country
Imagine
and
how much better shit
Constitution
would be right now if it
above
had been
any other
Bernie.
consideration. They did their jobs, as we must do ours. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
I now welcome our first panel of witnesses. We're joined today by a distinguished legislator from
Replit,
Arizona,
I bet that was scary.
Rusty Bowers,
I bet it was
who's
scary
a Republican
to be
Speaker of the Arizona
that
House
close.
of Representatives. Mr. Bowers was first elected to the state legislature in 1993 and has served as Speaker since 2019. Welcome, Speaker Bowers. Brad Raffensperger is the 29th Secretary of State of Georgia, serving in this role since 2019.
It's
As
the
an
bottom
elected
of
official
a
and
market bag.
Republican,
If you do
Secretary
exclamation point
Raffensperger
pattern
is responsible
in chat,
for
it'll show you the
supervising
project details,
elections
and there's
in
like
Georgia
finished
and
pictures and
maintaining
a
the
free
state's
pattern
public records.
if you want to follow
Welcome,
along.
Mr. Secretary.
Most people are much
Gabriel
faster at
Sterling
crocheting
is the
than
Chief
me.
Operating Officer in the
So you'd
Georgia
be able to catch up.
Secretary
I'm
of
only
State's
on
office.
round 4
Mr.
right now.
Sterling was
I
the
recommend starting
statewide
with the
voting
foundation
systems
row instead of a chain,
implementation
though.
manager
If
for the
anybody's
2020
going
election
to
in
crochet
Georgia,
along.
responsible for leading the
I need to go back
Secretary
and
of State's
count.
response
I'm so sorry,
to the
guys.
COVID pandemic and rolling out modernized voting equipment. I will swear in our witnesses. The witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
Crocheted
truth?
condom.
So help you God. Thank you. Please
I
be
could
seated.
sell it to Trump supporters.
Let the record reflect that the witnesses answered in the affirmative.
What?
Speaker Bowers, thank you for being with
Except
us
for a
today.
Biden flag.
You're the Speaker of the Arizona House and a self-described conservative Republican.
True.
You campaigned for President Trump and with him during the 2020 election. Is it fair to say that you wanted Donald Trump
Literally,
to
they
win
buy
a
stuff
second
from
term in
China all the
office?
time.
Please.
China.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
And is it your understanding that President Biden was the winner of the popular vote in Arizona in 2020?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Only 6 more
Thank
before
you.
we start doing.
Pursuant to
these
Section
series again here.
5C8 of House Resolution 503, the chair
Oh, time to
recognizes the
hydrate.
gentleman
Don't
from
mind if I do.
California,
Thanks for looking out for
Mr.
me,
Schiff,
Lieutenant Tim.
for questions.
Speaker Bowers, thank you
How
for
are
being
you?
with us today. Before we begin with the questions that I had prepared for you, I wanted to ask you about a statement that former President Trump issued, which I received just prior to the hearing. Have you had a chance to review
Oywin!
that statement?
At tier 2
my
even.
counsel
You're
called from
amazing.
Arizona and
Thank
read
you
it to
so
me.
much. That is a lot of months. That's 5 years.
In that statement, I won't read it in its
you.
entirety. Former
Love you,
President
bud.
Trump begins by calling you a
It's
rhino,
always lovely
Republican
to
in
see
name
you.
only. He then references a conversation in November 2020 in which he claims that you told him that the election was rigged and that he had won Arizona. To quote the former president, during the conversation, He told me the election was rigged and that I won Arizona, unquote. Did you have such a conversation with the president?
I did have a conversation with the president. That certainly isn't it, but there were parts of it that are true, but there are parts that are not, sir.
And the part that I read
Okay,
you,
I will move
is that
my
false?
stitch marker up to here.
Anywhere, anyone, anytime has said that I said the election was rigged, that would
And
not
then we
be
have
true.
to do decreases for 6 or not decreases,
And when
increases for 6
the former president in his
repeats
statement
we do.
today claimed that you told him that he won
Half
Arizona, is
double
that
crochet,
also
half
false?
double crochet,
That is
2
also
half double
false.
crochets. Or in my terms, I call that 3s.
Mr. Bowers, I understand that after the election, and I don't know whether this is the conversation the former president is referring to, but after the election, you received a phone call from President Trump and Rudy Giuliani in which they discussed the result of the presidential election in Arizona.
2.
If you would, tell us about that call and whether the former president or Mr. Giuliani raised allegations of election fraud.
3.
Thank you. My wife and I had returned from attending our church meetings. It was on a Sunday.
On the 3rd stitch.
And we were still in the
You doubled.
driveway, and I had received a call from a colleague telling me that the White House was trying to get in touch with her and I, and that she said, please, if you get a call, let's try to
In
take
earlier
this
times,
together.
they would have all been executed.
Immediately, I saw that
I'm
the
glad
White
they're
House
not
on my
getting
Bluetooth was
executed.
calling.
I'm glad they're not.
And I took the
think
call
that's
and
too
was
much.
asked by the, I would presume the
But
operator at the White House if I would hold for the president, which
yeah,
I did, and
the fact
Mr.
that Big
Giuliani
Alaska
came on
and Nick
first.
Fuentes are free to spout their
And
bullshit is
Niceties. Then
I can't
Mr.
believe
Trump,
it.
President Trump came on.
I
And
cannot believe they are
We
not
initiated
behind
a
bars.
conversation.
During that conversation, did you ask Mr. Giuliani for proof of these allegations of fraud that he was making?
On
I
multiple
had sleep
occasions,
issues
yes.
last night too, Mem
And
and
when
Tim.
you
I'm
asked
sorry to
him,
hear that I was
for
not
evidence
alone.
of this fraud, what did he say?
He said that they did have proof, and I asked him, do you have names? For example, we have 200,000 illegal immigrants, some large number, 5,000 or 6,000 dead people, etc. And I said, do you have their names? Yes. Will you give them to me? Yes. The president interrupted and said, give the man what he needs, Rudy. He said,
Yeah, that's why
I will.
Ashley Babbitt got
That happened
killed,
on
hey?
at least 2 occasions, that interchange in the conversation.
So Mr. Giuliani was claiming in the
I don't-
call that
I
there
don't
were
really
hundreds
think
of
that the cops
thousands
should
of
be charged
undocumented people
with the
and thousands of
insurrectionists.
dead
I
people
don't-
who had
I don't think that.
purportedly
I
voted
think that
in the
they
election?
did try
Yes.
to stop it from happening.
And you asked him
and
for
they would have
evidence
all
of
been
that.
murdered.
I did.
I feel like they all would have been
and
killed.
did you ever receive from him that evidence either during the call, after the call, or to this day?
Never.
I think all of those police officers would have ended up dead, and
What was the ask
things would have
during
escalated
this
so much
call?
worse.
He
Thank
was
you,
making
babe.
these
I'm
allegations of fraud,
dying.
but he had something or a couple things
Yep.
that they wanted you to do. What were those?
The ones I remember were first that we would hold, that I would
I
allow
think that those
an
cops
official
made the
committee
right call.
at the Capitol
To be honest,
so
like
that they could hear
I'm
this
not gonna
evidence
die for the
and that we
fucking
could
Capitol
take
building,
action
you know what I
thereafter.
mean?
And I refused. I said, up to that time, the circus, I called it a circus, had been brewing with
Have a good
lots
day,
of
Clara.
demonstrations, both at the counting center, at the Capitol, and other places.
I will.
And I didn't want to have that in the House. I did not feel that the evidence, granted in its absence, merited a hearing, and I didn't want to be used as a pawn. If there was some other need that the committee
we're
hearing would
halfway
fulfill.
through. That's what I thought.
So that was the first ask, that we hold
Sometimes
an official committee
it
hearing.
surprises me, though.
And what was his second ask?
I said, to what end? To what end the hearing? He said, well, we have heard by an official
was
high up in the
encouraging it
Republican
with dog whistles.
legislature that there is a legal theory or a legal ability in Arizona that you can remove the electors of President Biden and replace them. And we would like to have the legitimate opportunity through the committee to come to that end and remove that. And I said, that's something that's totally new to me. I've never heard of any such thing. And he pressed that point, and I said, look, you are asking me to do something that is counter to my oath when I swore to the Constitution to uphold it, and I also swore to the Constitution and the laws of the state of Arizona, and this is totally foreign as
I don't
an
recall
idea
hearing
or
anything
a
about
theory
National
to me,
Guard
and I would
so far.
never
They've only
do
said that Trump
anything
hasn't called
of
in a
such
response.
magnitude without
And
deep
they've talked
consultation
about that a
with
few
qualified
times.
attorneys, and I said, I've got
More
some
than
good
once, for
attorneys,
sure.
and I'm going to give you their names. But you are asking me to do something against my oath, and I will not break my oath.
Agree, Phoenix Sativa, about Ted Cruz and Lauren Boebert, and yeah.
During the conversation, and you heard,
What
I
is
think,
his name?
we played a snippet of Mr. Giuliani calling other state legislators, and
The other dude who
saying
was
that he was calling us
tweeting
essentially
about,
a fellow Republican. Did he make a similar
Pelosi.
appeal to you, or bring up the fact that you shared a similar party?
Hi,
Whether
Justin.
it was in that call or in a later meeting, he did bring that up more than once.
Lindsey Graham. It was Lindsey
how
Graham
would he bring
tweeted.
that up?
He would say, aren't we all
Pelosi's
Republicans here?
location, right?
I would think we would get a better reception. I mean, I would think you would listen a little more open to my suggestions, that we're all Republicans.
And this evidence that you asked him for that would justify this extraordinary step, I think you said they never produced. Why did you feel, either in the absence of that evidence or with it, what they were asking you to do would violate your oath to the Constitution?
First of all, when the people, and in Arizona, I believe it some 40 plus years earlier, the legislature had established the manner of electing our officials, or the electors for the presidential race.
Okay.
Once it was given to
Move the marker
people,
again here.
as in Bush v. Gore, illustrated by the Supreme Court, it becomes a fundamental right of the people. So as far as I was concerned, for someone to ask me in the, I would call it a paucity, there was no evidence being presented of any strength. Evidence can be hearsay evidence, it's still evidence, but it's still hearsay. But strong judicial quality evidence,
This is one of 40
anything
here.
that would say to me,
This
you have a
marker
doubt,
up to the 20th
deny
in a
your
minute,
oath.
As soon as we get there.
I will not do that. And on more than
They know they're going down. I will be shocked if anybody's held accountable.
on more than one occasion throughout
I will
all
be
this, that has been brought up.
I
And
I
it is a
truly think
tenet
that
of my
everything
faith.
is gonna skirt by, and it's the end of American democracy as we know it. To be perfectly
That the
honest.
Constitution
After
is
being let
divinely
down,
inspired.
watching the government
of my most basic
failure
foundational
after
beliefs.
failure after failure.
And so for me to
just
do that because
absolutely
somebody just
failing
asked
the
me
American
to,
people, I just have no
is
hope left.
foreign to my
I
very
just
being.
don't believe
I
that
will not
anything's
do
going
it.
to come of this, and I think that American democracy. I think that effectively it's
During
just
that
a corrupt
conversation,
state now.
Speaker Bowers, did you ask him if what he was proposing had ever been done before?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said, well, I'm
There
not
are
familiar with
pundits
Arizona law or any other laws, but
and government officials
I don't think so.
openly tweeting
And that
for the
also was brought
removal
up
of
in other
Liz Cheney,
conversations,
who is
both with him and with John Eastman.
no
and others.
fucking hero.
Speaker Bowers,
By
I
the
understand that
way,
a week after that call,
but
Mr.
one of the
Giuliani
only
appeared with
Republicans
others
actually
associated with
doing
President
her
Trump's
job and
effort to
upholding the
overturn
law of the
the result of the
land.
election at a purported legislative hearing
It's
in a hotel
wild.
ballroom in Phoenix. Was this an official hearing of the state legislature?
It was not.
And why was it not a real or official hearing of the legislature?
A legislator can hold a group meeting, he can call it a hearing, but when they ask me to have an official hearing, we establish it by protocols, public notice, etc. It's typically held at the Capitol, but it doesn't need to be. We can authorize a hearing off campus. And in this case, I had been asked on several occasions to allow a hearing. I had denied it, but said, you're free to hold a meeting, any meeting you want, to the person who asked, and which he ultimately did at think he was a little frustrated, but he ultimately did.
This meeting was the same day, I believe, that the governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey, certified Biden as the winner of the presidential election in Arizona. Did you meet with Mr. Giuliani and his associates while they were in Phoenix sometime after that purported legislative hearing at the hotel?
Yes, I did, sir.
And at that meeting, did Mr. Giuliani raise any specific allegations of election fraud again?
His initial comments were,
I'll catch up with you guys in a second. If I stop
groups
counting, it's all ogre.
Illegal individuals or people deceased, etc. And he had brought that up, and I wasn't alone in that meeting. There were others, and other members of the Senate aggressively questioned him. And then I proceeded to question him on the proof that he was going to bring me, etc. But he did bring those up, yes.
And these other legislators were also Republican members of the Senate?
They were, yes, sir.
And did they also press him for proof of these allegations?
They pressed him very strongly. Two of them especially, very strongly.
And at some point, did Mr. Giuliani ask one of the other attorneys on his team to help him out with the evidence?
He did. He asked Jenna Ellis, who was sitting to his right.
I will mark this.
One thing was that it was more to the point of, was there sufficient evidence or action that we could justify the recalling of the electors? But at that part of the conversation, I know he referred to someone else. But he did ask, do we have the proof, to Jenna, Miss Ellis? And she said yes.
I mean...
And I said, I want the names. Do you have the names? Yes.
That's gotten us nowhere.
How they voted.
Those protections were put in
place.
We
have all the information. I said, can you get to me that information?
His rapist sympathizer
Did you bring it
wife.
with you? Which was repeated
stock up on popcorn and watch it burn, then I suppose.
For some period of time.
Anyway, she delayed the SCOTUS protection bill in response to them installing the other gun law bill, and it actually benefits her if Kavanaugh bites it, because then Roe v. Wade doesn't get overturned.
That was Mr. Giuliani.
Like,
and what exactly did he say and how that
I just hope that
he said, we've got lots of theories.
Best case scenario, and this is a pipe dream.
I don't know if that was a gaffe.
Best case scenario is that
what he said,
Trump gets delegitimized
and others
his
in my group, the three in my group and my council, both remembered that specifically, and afterwards we kind of laughed about it.
From the Supreme Court.
And you're getting back to the ask in that phone call that preceded this meeting, he wanted you to...
Because AOC did not get what she wanted.
Have the legislature
only delayed the inevitable.
Biden electors and replace them with Trump electors on the basis of these theories of fraud?
Which is protection for old white rapists,
he did not say
but not
in those
for
exact
kids
words,
being decapitated in school by
say
guns.
That Arizona law, according to what he understood, that would be allowed.
If
we needed to come into session to take care of
If my nieces get killed in school shootings,
which initiated a discussion about, again, what I can legally and not legally do, and I can't go into session
all
in Arizona
suicide bomb, like
unilaterally,
fucking,
or on my sole prerogative.
It's
this
over
meeting or at any other
for those
time,
assholes.
Did anyone provide you with evidence of election fraud sufficient to affect the outcome of the presidential election in Arizona?
No one provided me ever such evidence.
The Select Committee has uncovered evidence in the course of our investigation that it's stopped
the protection legislation got
passed.
Individuals
with ties to the groups
or parties involved. It did not get delayed for that long at all.
Capitol.
Unfortunately,
one of those incursions took place in the Arizona House of Representatives building, as you can see in this footage.
I commend AOC, and I think that she did what's right, but
this is previously undisclosed video of protesters
she's pushing boulders uphill
and refusing to leave the building. One of the individuals prominently shown in this video
people pouring mineral oil down. It's
perhaps better known as the QAnon shaman. This rider entered the Capitol on January 6th, was photographed leaving a threatening note on the dais in the U.S. Senate chamber, and was ultimately sentenced to 41 months in prison after pleading guilty to obstruction of an official proceeding. Other protesters who occupied the Arizona House of Representatives building included Proud Boys, while men armed with rifles stood just outside the entrance.
Just wanted to make sure.
I understand these protesters were calling for you by name, Speaker Bowers.
More like AOC and Ilhan Omar. You're not wrong. And
Speaker
Bernie,
Bowers, did the president call you
those
again?
are the only three
later in
politicians that I
December?
really trust.
He did, sir.
And now I trust Liz Cheney, but
Did you tell the president in that
also
second
trust
call
her to
that you
vote
supported
fucking
him, that
stupidly?
you voted for him, but that you were not going to do anything illegal for him?
I did, sir.
Nevertheless, his lawyer, John Eastman, called you some days later on June 4th, 2021. And he did have a very specific ask that would have required you to
We're
do
normally
just what
in the
you had already
horror
told the
space,
president you
bread
wouldn't do.
crochets.
Something that would
But
violate
this is
your oath.
creepy enough
Is
for
that
creepy
correct?
That's
crochet.
correct. It wasn't just me. I had my counsel and others on the call.
I got
What
to
did,
count for the next
Dr. Eastman want you to
16.
do?
I'll catch up with you guys after that.
That we would, in fact, take a vote to overthrow, or I shouldn't say overthrow, that we would decertify the electors, and that because we had plenary authority to do so. And he cited Article 2, Section 1, I think it's Clause 2, and said that in his opinion that gave us the authority if there was, I don't recall him saying sufficient evidence, but there was some call or some strong reason to do so that we, or justification to do so that we could do that. And that he was asking that his suggestion was that we would do it. And I said, again, I took an oath. For me to take that, to do what you do, would be counter to my oath. I don't recall if it was in that conversation, clearly, that we talked more about the oath, but I said, what would you have me do? And he said, just do it and let the court sort it out. And I said, you're asking me to do something that's never been done in history, the history of the United States, and I'm going to put my state through that without sufficient proof, and that's going to be good enough with me? That I would put us through that, my state, that I swore to uphold both in Constitution and in law? No, sir.
We have sex cheaper.
I said,
Oh,
well,
boy.
my suggestion would be,
Is there anybody that could
just do it and let the courts
something about that? I don't think I have any YouTube mods
figure it all
here
out.
right
And
now.
I
Fuck.
didn't use that exact phrase, but that was what his meaning was. And
I'm
I
so sorry if
declined, and I believe that was
give me a
close to the
second
end of
to
our
get
phone
this.
call.
I'm so sorry.
And again, this took
everybody.
place after you had recently spoken with President Trump and told him that you wouldn't do anything illegal for him. Is that right?
It wasn't days after. Obviously, it was days after, but a few days had gone by.
But you had told President Trump you would not do anything illegal for him.
I did, both times.
And you told Dr. Eastman that you did not believe there was legal support to justify what he was asking, but he still wanted you to
Cinema
do it.
and Mansion
and
are just
effectively
so
let the
blatant
courts
about it. It's
work it out.
wild.
I've been warned, don't say things you think maybe he said, but I do remember him saying that the authority of the legislature was plenary and that you can do it. I said, then
Agree,
you should know
Phoenix.
that
I
I
agree
can't
with
even call
almost
the legislature
everything
into
you're
session
saying.
without a 2/3 majority vote. We're only 30 plus 1. There's no way that could happen.
But in your view, what he was asking you to do would have violated
Yeah,
the
Shardies, you're right.
Constitution
It's the same. It's the
of
same.
Arizona.
It's the same as having
morning
an
of January
abusive
6th.
childhood, having
Did.
an abusive
Mr. Biggs
authority
asked you to
around,
do.
right? Also, nice.
that was the day
Sorry,
that the vote was
Anton, I didn't see that.
occurring.
Also,
To
I never
each
messaged
state
you
to
back.
have
We'll be there
certification.
on Friday. We'll be at your
Or
place.
to
If you're here,
declare the
I'll
certification of the
message you
electors.
after stream.
And
I'm
he
so
asked
sorry that I
if
didn't
I
get
would,
back to you. I saw it
sign
and I
on
talked
both
to
to a letter
Josiah
that had
and then
been sent from
forgot
my
to
state
message you.
and
I'm the
or
worst.
that I would support the decertification of the electors, and I said I would not.
Mr. Speaker, on December 4th, 2020,
The cursing
shortly
when
after
she
your
voted
meeting
yeah.
with Rudy Giuliani and other allies of President Trump, you released a statement publicly addressing, quote,
she's
calls for the
absolutely inferior. I would
legislature
love to beat her
overturn
up.
the 2020 certified election
I would love
results.
to.
The statement is very
These
straightforward in
motherfuckers
explaining
really
the,
do
quote,
be making me
breathtaking
violent.
request, unquote, made by representatives of President Trump. Quote, that the Arizona legislature overturn the certified results
I would like
of
to
last
do the
month's
creator
election and deliver
clash
the
and
state's
box
electoral college
Kirsten
votes
Cinema.
to President Trump, unquote.
Oh shit, I need to mark this.
Why did you believe, as you wrote in this statement, that the rule of
U.S.
law
politics are wild,
forbid
like
you from doing
objectively
what
more
President Trump
profitable
and his
decisions
allies
get vetoed in
wanted
favor of less
you to do?
profitable status quo? Yeah, all the time.
Representative, I'm sorry, I should be saying, Mr. Chairman,
Box Joe Biden.
Representative Schiff.
That wouldn't be fair. He'd destroy me. He can ride a bike for 2 hours.
There's two sides to the answer. One is, what am I allowed to do, and what am I forbidden to do?
I actually do think that Joe Biden would be able to beat me up.
Pathway,
like, people
both
talk
in
about him
state
like he's
law,
a
nor to
frail
my
old
knowledge in
man. He's
federal law,
very spry.
for us to execute such a request.
Also,
And
I am incredibly
I am not
weak.
allowed to walk or act beyond my authority. If I'm not specifically authorized as a legislator, as a legislature, then I cannot act to the point of calling us into session. Some say that just a few legislators have plenary authority.
I was brought up not to hit women. That's sexist.
And that has come as part of all of this discussion, I'll call it. But so to not have authority and be forbidden to act beyond my authority on both counts, I am not authorized to take such action, and that would deny my oath.
In your statement, you included
Are you
excerpts
fucking
from President
kidding me?
Ronald
How are
Reagan's
you
inaugural
back?
address in 1981.
God
The newly
fucking damn
inaugurated
it.
president told the country, quote, the orderly transfer of authority as called for in the Constitution routinely takes place as it has for almost 2 centuries, and few of us stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony
I'm sorry,
we accept
guys.
as normal is
Is
nothing
there
less
anybody that's
than a
willing to
miracle.
go and moderate YouTube
Tell us,
for
if you
me
would,
just
Mr.
for
Speaker,
today?
why did you include President
I
Reagan's
can't
words
believe that
in your
just
public
happened.
statement?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Schiff, because I have a lot of admiration
How
for
did they
Ronald.
get past my fucking
I've
my first
had the
ban?
opportunity of going through his home with one other person and walking through, and
Yeah, Moth, if you want, just
I
say something in
have a lot of
YouTube chat,
admiration
and I
for
will add you as mod, and I'll undo it so that it's not like
When
a
he,
thing moving forward.
pointed
But
out,
I
which
just
is,
for today, I need somebody
I
to
have
squash
lived
bots
in
for
other
me,
country
please.
for a period of
That's
time.
okay, Lily. It's
and have
super okay.
visited
Thank
a
you
few
so much,
countries,
Moth. I
and
appreciate it a
during
lot.
election times,
What's the bot's
the
name?
fact that
NakedHD.xyz.
allow an election, support an election, and stand behind the election, even in the
Well,
past
it's
when
the
there
same
have
bot.
been serious questions about the election, and then move on without disturbance and with acceptance that we choose to follow the outcome of the will of the people. That will, it means a lot to me, and I know it meant a lot to him.
Thank goodness I've been
So we
marking so
included that.
diligently, or else this would be a shit show.
Thank you,
I would
Speaker Bowers.
love that,
I wanna
Shardies.
look
Thank you
even
so
more
much.
deeply at the fake elector
And thank you,
scheme.
Moth, as well. Thank you,
Every
guys.
4
I'm
years,
really sorry
citizens
to
from
ask
all
you
over
to
the
do
United
it. I
States go to the
promise I
polls
will
to elect their
remove
president.
that as soon
Under our
as the
Constitution,
time
when we
comes. I
cast
don't
our
expect
votes for
you to
president,
go
we are
and
actually
mod for
voting
me.
to send electors pledged to our preferred candidate to the Electoral College. In December, the electors in each state meet, cast their votes, and send those votes to Washington.
Yeah,
There's
all
only
of this
one
is
legitimate
really
slate of
annoying, Anton. A
electors
lot of
from
them are
each state.
acting like
On the 6th day of January, Congress meets in a joint session
like
to count
this
those
isn't
votes, and
a
the winner
coup
of the
attempt,
Electoral College vote
and like
becomes the
coup
president.
attempts aren't
In
normal
this
around
next
the
segment,
world.
you'll hear
You know
how
what I
President
mean?
Trump and his campaign
It's
were
wild.
directly involved in advancing and
Hi,
coordinating
Nomad. Bye, Nomad.
a plot to
Have a good
replace
one. Give
legitimate Biden
Pupper a
electors
kiss
with
for
fake
me,
electors
please.
not chosen by
Tell
the
her I love
voters.
her and she's a good girl.
You'll hear how this campaign convinced these fake electors to cast and submit their votes through fake certificates, telling them that their votes would only be used in the event that President Trump won his legal challenges. Yet when the president lost those legal challenges, when courts rejected them as frivolous and without merit, The fake elector scheme continued. At this point, President Trump's own lawyers, so-called Team Normal,
Dang it.
walked away rather than participate in the plan.
I think I
And his own
marked
White House
wrong.
counsel's office said that the plan was not legally sound.
Oh, no, we're
Let's
good.
play the following
Okay,
video
1,
produced
2,
by the
1,
Select
2,
Committee.
1, 2, 1, 2. All right.
My name is Casey Lucier. I'm an investigative counsel for the House Select Committee to investigate the
Hi,
January
Box of
6th
Fun.
attack on the United States Capitol. On November 18th, a lawyer working with the Trump campaign named Kenneth Cheesebro
Bread.
wrote a memo arguing that the Trump campaign should organize its own
That
electors in the
shouldn't be
swing
as funny
states
as it
that
is.
President Trump had lost. The Select Committee received testimony that those close to President Trump began planning to organize fake electors for Trump in states that Biden won in the weeks after the election.
Who do you
Hello,
remember
Wesker
being
Lover.
involved
Welcome.
in
Everybody
those
make
early
sure that Wesker
discussions
Lover
around
feels
Thanksgiving
welcome.
time?
Thanks for coming and hanging out with us
regarding
today.
having alternate electors meet?
Mr. Giuliani, several of Mr. Giuliani's associates, Mr. Meadows, members of Congress, although it's difficult to distinguish if the members that I'm thinking of were involved during Thanksgiving or if they were involved as we progressed through December.
At the president's direct request, the RNC assisted the campaign in coordinating this effort.
What did the president say when he called you?
Essentially, he turned the call over
Thank you
to
so much,
Mr.
you two.
Eastman, who then proceeded to talk about the importance of the RNC helping the campaign
Military was deployed
gather
for peaceful
these
BLM
contingent electors in
protests,
case
y'all.
any of the legal challenges
it's
that were
wild.
ongoing changed the result of any of the states. I think more just helping them reach out and assemble them. But my understanding is the campaign did take the lead, and we just were helping them in that role.
As President Trump and his supporters continued to lose lawsuits, some campaign lawyers became convinced that convening electors in states that Trump lost was no longer appropriate.
I just remember I either replied or called somebody saying, unless we have litigation pending that's like in these states, like I don't think this is appropriate, or this isn't the right thing to do. I don't remember how I phrased it, but and I got into a little bit of a back and forth, and I think it was with Ken Cheesebro, where I said, all right,
No.
I mean, you just get after it. Like I'm out.
At that point, I
Feed the
had
birds. It's 3
Josh
p.m.
Finley email Mr. Chesbro
I'm out of kibble for the crows right
politely to say, this is your task. You are responsible for the Electoral College issues moving forward. And this was my way of taking that responsibility to zero.
The committee learned the White House counsel's
Yeah.
office also felt the plan was
Fucking
potentially
Maxime
illegal.
Bernier.
So to be clear, did you hear the White House
I
counsel's
cannot
office say
believe
that
some of the
this
truly
plan to have
racist
alternate electors
shit that
meet
dude
and cast
tweets.
votes for Donald Trump in states that he had lost was not legally sound?
Yes, sir.
And
I'm
who was
sorry
the
my
president for
country
that
is
meeting
trying
that
to
you
ruin
remember?
your country.
It
Anton.
was in our office. It was Mr. Meadows, Mr. Giuliani, and a few of Mr. Giuliani's associates.
The Select Committee interviewed several of the individual fake electors, as well as Trump campaign staff who helped organize the effort.
We were just, kind of useful idiots or rubes at that point. A strong part of me really feels that it's
They'll
just
eat
kind of
peanuts
as
and
the
blueberries,
road
too.
continued and
I
as
don't
it
have
was
either of those on hand.
failure that
The cheapest
got
way for me to
formulated
feed
as
them,
what do we have on
since
the
I don't
table.
have any
Let's just do it.
feed farms nearby that I can just buy
now,
bulk
after
dried
what we've
corn
told
from.
you today about the Select Committee's
uh,
investigation about the conclusion
is
of
to just
the
get
professional lawyers
cheap
on the
cat
campaign
food.
staff, Justin Clark, Matt Morgan, and Josh Finley, about their unwillingness to participate in the convening of these electors.
I feel like
how
it
does that
would have
contribute to your
been much,
understanding of these
much
issues?
more violent towards them,
I'm
Phoenix.
Angry. I'm angry.
I think you're absolutely
because
right.
I think in a sense, no one really cared if
Alright, weird that
people were potentially putting themselves in jeopardy.
Would you have not wanted to participate in this any further as well?
I absolutely would not.
Oh,
had I
that's
known
the
that
problem.
three
I need to
main
look at my
lawyers
pattern. I'm
for
a
the
big dumb
campaign,
Dumbo.
that I'd spoken
on around
to in
5
the
now.
past and we're leading up. We're not on board.
Oh, we're just supposed to half
yeah.
double.
I was told that
in each
these
now.
would only
Okay,
count
yeah, that's
if
fine.
a court
We can do
ruled in
that.
our favor. So that would have been
This is already the bottom of the
using
bag.
our electors.
Ooh, I feel
well,
like
would
this
have
is
been
going to be a
using our
lot smaller
electors
than I thought it would
in
be. I'm
ways that
using
we
the
weren't told
appropriate
about.
sized yarn and needle.
And we wouldn't have supported.
That's wild, but
Documents
okay.
obtained by the Select Committee indicate that instructions
go
were given to the
from
electors
5
in
to
several
10.
states that they needed to cast their ballots.
Love you,
in
Amy.
complete
Have a good
secrecy.
day.
Because this scheme involved fake electors, those participating in certain states had no way to comply with state election laws, like where the electors were supposed to meet. One group of fake electors even considered hiding overnight.
It's bigger
to
than I
ensure
think
that
it
they
is?
could access
Okay.
the state capitol, as required in Michigan.
Did Mr. Norton
I'll take
say
your word
who
on
he
that.
was
I
working with
definitely
at
trust
all
what
on
you have to
this
say about
effort
it.
to have electors meet?
Okay, so we'll
He
have to
said he was
go
working with the president's campaign.
back here.
He told me.
Oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene is another one that
that
should be
the
fucking ousted. She's crazy.
Michigan Republican
She's like
electors
literally
were
crazy.
planning to meet
And I
in
don't
the
mean to be
Capitol
ableist here,
and
but if you're
hide
crazy, you
overnight
cannot
so
be
that
an
they
authority.
could
And that's just
fulfill
true. I don't have anything
role of
against crazy
casting
people.
their
I feel
vote
terrible
in
for people who
per
are mentally
law
unwell.
in the
I am mentally unwell
Michigan,
myself. I am literally crazy too. But like
chambers.
she
And
has
I
demonstrated that
told
she is
him
not
in no
mentally fit
uncertain
for
terms
office.
that was insane and inappropriate.
In one state, the fake electors even asked for a promise that the campaign would pay their legal fees. Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Nevada, and Wisconsin.
Cool. I've been having this
At the request
issue
of the
with
Trump
YouTube
campaign,
lately.
The electors from these battleground states signed documents falsely asserting that they were the, quote, duly elected electors from their
I have a
state
question,
and submitted them to the National Archives and to Vice President
question is,
Pence
Dane,
in his
living
capacity as president
in a
of the
trust-based
Senate.
society.
Here's what some of the fake elector certificates look like as compared to the real ones.
I'm sorry, I'm annoyed
ballots
that
have no legal
my
effect.
computer is being
In
stupid,
an email
not
produced to the
about
Select
anything that
Committee,
you guys are doing.
Dr. Eastman told a Trump
Why,
campaign
I may be wrong, but
representative
it
that
seems
it
this
did
way.
not
Does so many
matter that
Americans
the
not trust
electors had
authorities
not
and their
been
government
approved by a
because they're
state
corrupt?
authority.
That, like, there's
Quote,
just
the fact that we have
blatant
multiple
corruption
slates of electors
happening.
demonstrates the uncertainty of either. That
Division
should be
has
enough.
been sown
He urged that
so
Pence
deep
act boldly
that
and be challenged. Documents produced to the Select Committee show that the Trump campaign
even
took steps to
if
ensure
there
that the
isn't
physical
corruption,
copies
people
of
are
the
going
fake
to
electors'
call for
electoral
corruption
votes
because of
from 2
the
states were delivered to
IDPA.
Washington for January 6th. Text messages exchanged between Republican Party officials in Wisconsin show that on January 4th, the Trump campaign asked for someone to fly their fake electors' documents to Washington. A staffer for Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson texted a staffer for Vice President Pence just minutes before the beginning of the joint session. This staffer stated that Senator Johnson wished to hand-deliver to the vice president the fake electors' votes from Michigan and Wisconsin. The vice president's aide unambiguously instructed them not to deliver the fake votes to the vice president. Even though the fake elector slates were transmitted to Congress and the executive branch, the vice president held firm in his position that his role was to count lawfully submitted electoral votes.
Joseph R. Biden
Seems
Jr.
that has been like this for many
of the
decades.
state of Delaware has received
I
306
don't recall
votes.
it being
Donald J.
like
Trump
that
of the
for
state
many
of Florida
decades, but
has received
I don't know.
232 votes.
Which is what he did when the joint session resumed.
I feel
on
like
January
people had
6th
too
after
much
the
trust
attack on
in the
Capitol.
government. Yeah, what Hot for Hots 41 said. I feel like we've had too much trust in the government.
What we just heard.
Digital
in that
Dak, thank
video
you
was
so
an
much
aide
for the
to
follow.
White
I
House Chief of
appreciate
Staff,
you.
telling this committee that the White House counsel's office felt that this fake electors plan was not legally sound. Nevertheless,
Okay,
the Trump campaign
so
went
it
forward
definitely
with
is
the
a lot
scheme
bigger than I thought
anyway.
because we do just
Speaker
5
Bowers,
rows
were you aware that
of
fake electors had
single
met in
hay
Phoenix on
doubles?
December 14th and purported
And
to cast
that will
electoral
still
votes
be a
for
pretty
President Trump?
sturdy
I was
bag
not.
bottom. So I feel
When
a
you
little bit
learned
better
that these
about
electors
that.
had met and sent their electoral votes to Washington, what did you think?
Can you guys hear the crows
Well,
outside? Oh, I love them so much.
I thought of the
They're
book,
so
The
cute.
Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. And I just thought, this is a tragic parody.
Yeah, yes. What
Mr. Bowers, I
what Comrade
understand
Courtesy
that
is
as you flew
saying
from Phoenix to Washington yesterday,
100 times
you
over.
reflected upon some passages from a personal journal that you were keeping in December 2020 while all of this was taking place. With your permission, I'm wondering if you would be willing to share one passage in particular with us.
Thank you very much. It is painful to have friends who have been such a help to me turn on me with such rancor. I may, in the eyes of men, not hold correct opinions or act according to their vision or convictions, but I do not take this current situation in a light manner, a fearful manner, or a vengeful manner. I do not want to be a winner by cheating. I will not play with laws I swore allegiance to with any contrived desire towards deflection of my deep foundational desire to follow God's will as I believe He led my conscience to embrace. How else will I ever approach Him in the wilderness of life, knowing that I ask this guidance only to show myself a coward in defending the course He let me take. He led me to take.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those are powerful words. I understand that taking the courageous positions that you did.
I'm certain they made the Space
election
Force specifically
defense of the
so they
rule of
didn't
law and
have to put
protecting the
money
voters
into
of Arizona
health and education.
resulted in you and your family being subjected to protests and terrible threats. Can you
and
tell us how
like
this impacted
social
you and your
programs
family?
for poverty.
Well, as others in the videos have mentioned, we received, my secretaries would say, in excess of 20,000 emails and tens of thousands of voicemails and texts, which saturated our offices and we were unable to work, or at least communicate. But at home, up till even recently, it is the new pattern or a pattern in our lives to worry what will happen on Saturdays.
Yeah,
because
it's a circus. It's a complete circus.
Various groups come by.
It's all pageantry.
They have had video
United States
panel
is
trucks
doomed.
with videos of me proclaiming me to be a pedophile and a pervert and a corrupt and politician, and blaring loudspeakers in my neighborhood and leaving literature both on my property, but arguing and threatening with neighbors and with myself. I don't know if I should name groups, but there was one gentleman that had the 3 bars on his chest, and he had a pistol and was threatening my neighbor, not with the pistol, but just vocally. When I saw the gun, I knew I had to get close. And at the same time, on some of these, we had a daughter who was gravely ill, who was upset by what was happening outside. And my wife, that was a valiant person, very, very strong, quiet, very strong woman.
Don't love the way he just described his wife.
So it was disturbing.
Why would
disturbing.
he call her quietness
Speaker, I wanna
into
thank you.
question? Like,
For your service to the state of Arizona and to the country. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I think it'd be appropriate to take a short recess. Accordingly, I reserve the balance of my time.
The chair requests that those in the hearing room remain seated until the Capitol Police have escorted members and witnesses from the room. We'll have 5 minutes, 5-minute recess.
all right, everybody, you have 5 minutes. I want to do some quick shilling here. Thank you so much to everybody who has been supporting today. I appreciate it so much. Just want to let you know that I do have a throne wish list that you can contribute to wish list items on if you're feeling like it. There's that. Thank you so much to my patrons. I don't have it open, but it's Big Wolf Paws, Quinn Kenobi, Laura Cody, and Katie Bailey. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Please join the Discord. Please follow me on Twitter. And I absolutely will hydrate. We'll do that right now. Everybody make sure that you get yourself some water, a snack if you need it. Get up, touch your toes if you're able. Look after yourself, and we will be back in 5.
And the January 6th committee in a short break now. This first portion of the hearing has run about an hour. Just heard from the Republican Speaker of the House of Arizona, Rusty Bowers. Still to give testimony today, officials from Georgia, including Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. If you missed any of the hearing, we'll be showing it again this evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on C-SPAN. Members have been focusing on how former President Trump pressured Georgia and Arizona officials to influence the outcome of the vote in those states. Again, the hearing expected to resume shortly. The January 6 committee's in a short break. Members have been focusing on how former President Trump pressured Georgia and Arizona officials to influence the outcome of the vote in those states. Today's lead questioner is Congressman Adam Schiff. He has represented California's 28th district for 11 terms. He also sits on the House Judiciary Committee, and he participated in both of the impeachment proceedings against former President Donald Trump. Mr. Schiff was both an attorney and a prosecutor before serving in Congress. Today's January 6 committee hearings and all of C-SPAN's programming is brought to you as a public service by the cable industry and these television companies, including Altice, Comcast, and Uverse. If you're watching on TV but you have to step away, you can continue watching the hearing on the go with C-SPAN Now. It's our free mobile video app.
I'm going pee super quick. I'll be right back. It looks like we're coming back. I'll be right there. Sorry about the wait there, y'all. Yeah, you can make Tinder a blocked term. I don't know how to do that, but Mothman, if you know how, I'm all about that shit. Sorry, I had to get more coffee and eat a quick hard-boiled egg. I fasted all day yesterday. I fast on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays now. and it's getting easier, but it's still it's hard to explain what goes on with that. It's just what the fuck? Why isn't it doing real full screen? This is infuriating. Hello? Why isn't it doing real full screen? Does anybody know? Wow, really? If that's it's not healthy to fast Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a long period of time. I'm just doing it to reset my ghrelin. I'm not gonna be doing it for like longer than a couple months, probably. Don't worry if that's it. Like, please don't worry about it. I promise to be smart about it. Hunger was like ruling me. Try pressing F11. My keyboard, I don't have access. My ghrelin, it's the hunger hormone for your belly to tell your body when your belly's empty and full. I don't have access to my keyboard, so it shouldn't have even like been a thing. Why is this happening? Since I got my colon replaced, if I don't eat regularly, I get headaches and stomach pains. Yeah, that's a bummer. I'm having a hard time focusing on what's being said because of sleep problems, but I bet hunger is playing a little bit into it as well. And just curious. No problem. No problem at all. I have the utmost confidence in like my plan. So it's not gonna I'm not gonna be insecure and defensive about talking about it. So if anybody has any questions,
Trump's pressure campaign against state officials.
My belly just has gremlins. Yo, that's how I felt. 100%. That's how I felt.
But the former president had a particular obsession with Georgia. Here is the president on the afternoon of January 6th.
Anyway, yeah, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. I eat
you are about to hear are patently false.
Switch to that circle thing. I don't know anything about it. You should tweet it at me. I would love to not be as reliant on coffee as I am, especially since coffee is like going the way of old Yeller, hey?
And we're not going to forget it.
It's getting very expensive. And with climate change, we're not going to have coffee for much longer. I would like to be ahead of that.
I want to emphasize that our investigation into these issues is still ongoing. As I stated in our last hearing, if you have relevant information or documentary evidence to share
okay, then we'll just stick with the plan for today. And if it is a problem next time, then we'll do it.
Secretary Raffensperger, thank you for being here today. You've been a public servant in Georgia since 2015.
Thinking about eating often makes you queasy.
As a member of the Georgia House of Representatives. And then,
when
since
I was a teen, I suffered from severely
State.
disordered eating,
As
and I got treated for that. And I feel like it just overcorrected and was not handled well.
To win the 2020 election? Yes, it is.
So, like, just my relationship with food is entirely broken.
That election day, November 3rd, 2020, was a largely
non-caffeinated flavored water thing. Yeah, it does sound like
states.
Fun Waters.
In spite of the challenges of conducting an election during a pandemic, you wrote in the Washington Post that the election was, quote, successful.
Hi, Snuggles, by the way. How are you?
What was your impression of how Election Day had proceeded in Georgia?
On Election Day in November,
I might switch to, like, G Fuel.
Smooth.
I might give G Fuel a try.
We meet at the GEMA headquarters. That's the Georgia Energy Emergency Management Association.
I don't know what the
location, but we were following wait times in line. In the afternoon, our average wait time was 3 minutes.
Dunk
statewide
told me that
we
it's
were recording
amazing.
for various
he told
precincts.
Me that it's really, really
it actually
yummy.
got down to 2 minutes.
I've never tried it.
And at the end of the day, we felt that we had a successful election from the standpoint of the administration and the operation of the election.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Raffensperger, did Joe Biden win the 2020 presidential election in Georgia, and by what margin?
President Biden carried the state of Georgia by approximately 12,000 votes.
And Mr. Secretary, as I understand it, your office took several steps to ensure the accuracy of the vote count in Georgia.
That'll do it. I'm
Reviewing
sorry
the
that
vote
you struggle
count
with
in
that.
at least 3 different
It's not
ways.
a fun place to be.
These steps included a machine recount,
just
a
know
forensic
that you
audit,
have my
and a full hand
solidarity
recount
as a
of every one
consolation
of the
prize,
5
and that's
million
not
ballots
amazing
cast.
or anything.
Did these
but
efforts, including
I
a
hope you
recount of
feel
literally
at least
every
heard
ballot
and
cast in the state
understood.
of
I'm
Georgia,
very
confirm
sorry.
the result?
Yes, they did. We counted the ballots where the first tabulation would be scanned. Then when we did our 100% hand audit of the entire, all 5 million ballots in the state of Georgia, all cast in place, all absentee ballots, they were all hand recounted, and they came remarkably close to the first count. And then upon the election being certified, President Trump, because he was within 0.5%, could ask for a recount. And then we recounted them again through the scanners, and we got remarkably the same count. 3 counts, all remarkably close, which showed that President Trump did come up short.
Nevertheless, as you will see, the president and his allies began making numerous false allegations of voter fraud, false allegations that you and Mr. Sterling, among others, had to address. Mr. Sterling, thank you also for being here today. Following the 2020 election, in addition to your normal duties, I understand that you became a spokesperson to try to combat disinformation about the election and the danger it was creating for elections officials, among others. In a December 1 press conference, you addressed some of your remarks directly to President Trump. Let's take a look at what you said that day.
Mr. President, it looks like you likely lost the state of Georgia. We're investigating. There's always a possibility. I get it. And you have the rights to go through the courts. What you don't have the ability to do, and you need to step up and say this, is stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to get shot. Someone's going to get killed. And it's not right. It's not right.
Lily, did you see the one on the day of the insurrection? I cannot believe that guy didn't get
Mr. Schiff, we had a previously scheduled press conference that day, as we were in the habit of doing, trying to be as transparent as we could about the election and the counts going on. A little after lunch that day, lunchtime, I received a call from the project manager from Dominion Voting Systems.
Not to take away from how amazing this interpreter is.
Shaken. She's not the kind of person I would assume would be that way. She has a master's from MIT, a graduate of the Naval Academy, and was very much on the ball and pretty unflappable. And she informed me about a young contractor they had who had been receiving threats from a video had been posted by some QAnon supporters. And at that point, we had been been steeping in this kind of stuff. So it was around us all the time. So I didn't take note of it more than adding to the pile of other stuff we were having to deal with. And I did pull up Twitter, and I scrolled through it, and I saw the young man's name. There was a particular tweet that, for lack of a better word, was a straw that broke the camel's back. Had the young man's name. It was a very unique name. I believe it was a first-generation American. And it said, had his name, "You committed treason. May God have mercy on your soul," with a slowly twisting gif of a noose. And for lack of a better word, I lost it. I just got irate. My boss was with me at the time, the Deputy Secretary, Jordan Fuchs, and she could tell that I was angry. I tend to turn red from here up when that happens, and that happened at that time. And she called Secretary Raffensperger to say, "We're seeing these kind of threats, and Gabe thinks we need to say something about it." And the Secretary said yes, and that's what prompted me to do what I did. I lost my temper, but it seemed necessary at the time because it was just getting worse, and I could not tell you why that particular one was the one that put me over the edge, but it did.
I feel like I'm being trolled by a real person.
Did Donald Trump urge his supporters to avoid the use of violence?
Not to my knowledge.
Now, as we know, the president was aware of your speech because he tweeted about it later that day. Let's take a look at what the president said.
I'm furious.
In the tweet, Donald Trump claims that there was, quote, massive voter fraud in Georgia. Mr. Sterling, that was just plain false, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Nevertheless, the very next day, on December 2nd, President Trump released a lengthy video again making false claims of election fraud in Georgia. Let's take a look at what he said this time.
They found thousands.
I'm going to try to figure out how to make it
that were out of whack, all against me.
In fact, the day after Donald Trump released that video, so now we're talking just 2 days after the emotional warning that you gave that someone's going to get killed, representatives of President Trump appeared in Georgia, including Rudy Giuliani, and launched a new conspiracy theory that would take on a life of its own and threaten the lives of several innocent election workers. This story falsely alleges that sometime during election night, election workers at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, kicked out poll observers. After the observers left, the story goes, these workers pulled so-called suitcases of ballots from under a table and ran those ballots through counting machines multiple times. Completely without evidence, President Trump and his allies claimed that these suitcases contained as many as 18,000 ballots, all for Joe Biden. None of this was true. But Rudy Giuliani appeared before the Georgia State Senate and played a surveillance video from State Farm Arena.
I just blocked
falsely
the
claiming
keyword Tinder.
that it showed this conspiracy taking place. Here's a sample of what Mr. Giuliani had to say
I didn't
during
think
that
that I'd
hearing.
be able to do it without my keyboard, but
And when you look
I
at what
was
you
able to
saw
just
on the
copy and
video,
paste.
which to me was a smoking gun, powerful smoking gun, well, I don't have to be a genius to figure out what happened. And I don't have to be a genius to figure out that those votes are not legitimate votes. You don't put legitimate votes under a table.
No.
Wait until you throw the opposition out, and in the middle of the night, count them. We would have to be fools to think that.
President Trump's campaign amplified Giuliani's false testimony in a tweet, pushing out the video footage. Giuliani likewise pushed out his testimony on social media. As you can see in this tweet, Mr. Giuliani wrote that it was, quote, now beyond doubt, unquote, that Fulton County Democrats had stolen the election. Later in this hearing, we'll hear directly from one of the election workers in this video about the effect these lies had on her and on her family. Mr. Sterling, did the investigators in your office review the entire surveillance tape from the State Farm Arena on election night?
They actually reviewed approximately 48 hours going over the time period where action was taking place at the counting center at State Farm Arena.
And what did the tape actually show?
Depending on which time you want to start, because as was mentioned, this conspiracy theory took on a life of its own, where they conflated a water main break that wasn't a water main break and throwing observers out and a series of other things. What it actually showed was Fulton County election workers engaging in normal ballot processing. One of the things that was very frustrating was the so-called suitcases
ballot
of
is a
ballots
good
from under
name
the
for a
table.
dog.
If you watch the entirety of the video,
If you're like
you saw
a government
that these were election
official,
workers who were under the impression they were going to
Name
get to
your
go
dog
home
Ballot.
around 10:30. People are putting on their coats. They're putting ballots that are prepared to be scanned into ballot carriers that are then sealed with tamper-proof seals so that they can, they're not messed with. It's an interesting thing because you watch there's 4 screens of the video, and as you're watching it, you can see the election monitors in the corner with the press as they're taking these ballot carriers and putting them under the table. You see it there. One of the other hidden ones, if you looked at the actual tape, was on the outside of the table, just from the camera angle. You couldn't see it originally. And
Well,
this
you
goes
make me
under the
happy.
no
I'm
good
happy
deed
you're
goes
here today.
unpunished. We were told, we were at GEMA, as the secretary pointed out, and we were told that it looked like they were shutting down the Fulton County counting. The secretary expressed some displeasure at that because we wanted to everybody keep counting so we could get to the results and know what was happening.
election fraud is
So our
definitely
elections
a
director
worse name,
called
yeah.
their elections director, who was at another location because this was election day. There was 2 different places where
Except for
ballot
it's
things
not
were being
long enough.
done
It's got to
by
be
the
like
Fulton County office.
election fraud on a Sunday.
So he
That
called
is the
elections director of Fulton, then called Ralph
the
Jones, who
resource's
was
full
at
name.
the State Farm Arena, and said, "What the heck are you doing? Go ahead and stay." And as you watch the video itself, you see him take the phone call as people are putting things away and getting ready to leave. And you can tell for about 15, 20 seconds, he does not want to tell these people they have to stay. He walks over, he thinks about it for a second, you see him come back to the corner of a desk and kind of slumps his shoulders and says, "Okay, y'all, we got to
We've
keep on counting."
scientifically
And you see him take their
determined
coats
that
off,
2
get the
syllable
ballots out.
names are best
And then
for
a
dogs
secondary
and
thing you'll
cats.
see on there is you'll have people who are counting ballots.
They just recognize them
Batch will go
better.
through. They will take them off and run that through again. What happens there is a standard operating procedure.
And two-syllable
If there's a misscan, if
commands.
there's a misalignment, if it doesn't read right, these are high-speed, high-capacity scanners. So 3 or 4 will go through after a misscan. You have to delete that batch and put it back through again. And by going through the hand tally, as the Secretary pointed out, we showed that if there had been multiple ballots scanned without a corresponding physical ballot, your counts would have been a lot higher than the ballots themselves. And by doing the hand tally, we saw 2 specific numbers that were met. The hand tally got us to a 0.1053% off of the total votes cast and 0.0099% on the margin, which is essentially dead on accurate. Most academic studies say on a hand tally you'll have between 1% and 2%, but because we use ballot marking devices where it's very clear what the voter intended, it made it a lot easier for us to conduct the hand count and show that none of that was true.
Now, I understand that
what's your Lily look like?
When you reviewed these tapes and did the analysis, it disproved this conspiracy theory. But you still had to take a lot of steps to try to make sure the public knew the truth about these allegations. And you did frequent briefings for the press. Let's take a look at one of those press briefings, Mr. Sterling, that you held on December 7th to make the point that you just did today.
Move on to what I'm going to call Disinformation Monday. Out of the gate, many of y'all saw the videotape from State Farm Arena. I spent hours with our post-certified investigators.
Don't bother
Justin
yourself,
Grape from
Lily.
WSB.
If you want
spent
to,
hours
by all
with
means,
us
go
going
ahead.
over
We're
this
gonna
video
love
to explain to
looking at
people
Lily.
that what you
But,
saw, the secret suitcases with magic ballots, were actually ballots that had been packed into those absentee ballot carriers by the workers in plain view of the monitors and the press. And what's really frustrating is the president's attorneys had this same videotape. They saw the exact same things the rest of us could see, and they chose to mislead state senators and the public about what was on that video. I'm quite sure that they will not characterize the video if they try to enter into evidence, because that is the kind of thing that can lead to sanctions.
Is incredible.
Because it's obviously untrue. They knew it was untrue, and they continue to do things like this.
Mr. Sterling, despite the efforts by your office to combat this misinformation by speaking out publicly and through local media, you were unable to match the reach of President Trump's platform and social media megaphone spreading these false conspiracy theories. What was it like to compete with a president who had the biggest bully pulpit in the world to push out these false claims?
For lack of a better word, it was frustrating. But oftentimes I felt our information was getting out, but that there was a reticence of people who needed to believe it because the President of the United States, whom many looked up to and respected, was telling them it wasn't true, despite the facts. And I characterized at one point it was kind of like a shovel trying to empty the ocean. And yes, it was frustrating. I even have family members who I had to argue with about some of these things, and I would show them things. And
Poppers and kibbies.
The problem you have is you're getting to people's hearts. I remember there's one specific, an attorney that we know that we showed and walked him through. This wasn't true. Okay, I get that. This wasn't true. Okay, I get that. This wasn't 5 or 6 things. But at the end, he goes, I just know in my heart they cheated. That's just, and so once you get past the heart, the facts don't matter as much. And our job, from our point of view, is to get the facts out, do our job, tell the truth, follow the Constitution, follow the law, and defend the institutions. And the institutions held.
Let's take a look at what you were competing with. This is the former president speaking in Georgia on December 5th.
Evidence of fraud is overwhelming, and again, I'm going to ask you to look up at that very, very powerful and very expensive screen.
Hidden cases of possible ballots are rolled out from under a table. 4 people under a cloud of suspicion.
So, if you just take the crime
what the
of
fuck?
what those Democrat workers were doing, and by the way, there was no water main break. They said there was no water main break. That's 10 times more than I need.
I guess it doesn't matter if it's in their name.
It's 10 times, maybe more than that, but it's 10 times more because we lost by a very close number.
This
I'm
committee's
very
hearing
sorry.
last Monday, we heard
Wes
from
Glover,
senior
thank you
federal
so
law
much for the
enforcement
follow. I
officials.
appreciate you.
From
Yeah,
the
Moth,
senior-most
I'm just going to have to ask
federal law
for
enforcement
your
official in Atlanta at the
services.
time,
I'm really sorry.
U.S. Attorney
that
for the
that
Northern
didn't
District,
work.
B.J. Pack, as well as former Attorney General Bill Barr. They both testified that the allegations were thoroughly investigated and found to have no merit. Here is U.S. Attorney Pack.
Particular to Attorney General Barr, I told him that we looked into it. We've done several things, including interviewing the witnesses. I listened to the tapes and reviewed the videotape myself, and that there was nothing there. Giuliani was wrong in representing that this was a suitcase full of ballots.
And here's what Attorney General Bill Barr had to say about the same allegations.
See you
Took
later,
a
Dragon
hard
Runner.
look at this ourselves, and based on our review of it, including the interviews of the key witnesses, the Fulton County allegations had no merit.
We also have testimony from senior Department of Justice officials establishing that they specifically told President Trump that these allegations had been thoroughly investigated and were completely without merit. Here is Acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue describing a phone conversation in which he specifically told President Trump that these allegations were false.
And kept fixating on this suitcase that supposedly had fraudulent ballots and that the suitcase was rolled out from under the table. And I said, no, sir, there is no suitcase. You can watch that video over and over. There is no suitcase. There is a wheeled bin where they
carry the ballots. No matter how many times senior Department of Justice officials, including his own Attorney General, told the president that these allegations were not true, President Trump kept promoting these lies and putting pressure on state officials to accept them. On January 2nd, the president had a lengthy telephone conversation with Secretary Raffensperger. Prior to the president's call, though, I want to share a bit of important context. First, the White House, including the former president's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, repeatedly called or texted the secretary's office some 18 times in order to set up this call. They were quite persistent. Second, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows took the extraordinary step of showing up at a signature audit site in Georgia, where he met with Secretary Raffensperger's chief investigator, Francis Watson, who was supervising that audit process.
I feel like you would earn a lot of money doing that.
Behind me is a photograph from that
cruel and
visit.
unusual punishment, though.
Third, the day after Meadows' Georgia visit, he set up a call between President Trump and Francis Watson. On the call between President Trump and Georgia investigator Francis Watson, the former president continued to push the false claim
I am
that
so
he'd won the state of
demoralized by
Georgia.
these bots.
Let's listen
you
to
know
that
what?
part of
Like,
the conversation.
You fucking win, bots.
You know, it's just, you have the most important job in the country right now, because if we win Georgia, first of all, if we win, you're going to have two wins. So they're not going to win right now. You know, they're down. Because
Oh, we have 5 people watching on YouTube. I was going to turn it off.
I know I won by hundreds of thousands of votes.
Could I have people spam chat when that happens so that it's
And in
not
this
on
next
screen
clip,
for
he
a long
told the state
time?
law enforcement official that she'd be praised if she found
I agree with you entirely,
the right answer.
Phoenix.
Hopefully, you know, I will. When the right answer comes out, you'll be praised. I mean, I don't know why. You know, they've made it so hard.
Thank you, Moth.
They will be praised. People will say.
Oh, is
"Great."
it? Okay, then I'm
Because
turning
that's
off.
what it's
I'm
about,
turning
that
off
ability to
YouTube.
check it.
Sorry, guys.